Hey, what's up? It's Scott, the Frozen Gamer. Why am I dressed up like this today? Well, we still have heat in the house, and it's actually not that cold in Minnesota. It's because today we're talking about Boom! K2, the mountain climbing game. Classic game from 2010 by Adam Kaluza. Free to play on Board Game Arena if you want to. Let's hit the table and check it out. Welcome to K2, the second highest mountain in the world, and probably the most dangerous mountain to climb in the world. This is a setup for a 5-player game of K2 that is its max, so 5 colors out here. Let's go over what the object of the game is. The object of the game is to get your climbers as many points as possible, and that's getting up higher and higher on the mountain. Until you summit, you get 10 points. Now, summiting, though, doesn't mean that you're going to keep those 10 points. You have to survive 18 turns, which is 18 days in the game, and still survive. And usually once you summit, you're not going to stay alive if you stay at the summit, so you usually need to start getting your guys back down the mountain to stay alive. If you die, any points that you've accumulated for that character go to 0. Let's look at the components for the game. So everyone's going to have one climber that I call the baggy climber because he looks like he has baggy snow pants on. And then we got our tight climber that has like a slim fit snowsuit on. And now the baggy climber really likes baggy things, so he's got a baggy tent. And the tight climber with slim fit clothes on has a slim fit tent. Over here we have the same exact guys as over on the main part of the board, and this is for your score track. So these are going to go up and keep track of your score as you progress up the mountain. Over here is your acclimatization track. You got one for your baggy climber and one for your tight climber. First player marker. Everyone gets a deck of cards, and they all have your own little symbol and color on them, just so you can make sure that you have the right deck. These guys over here are the risk tokens. We're going to start with 3 of them face up. And up at the top here, which I'll show you more closely later, is the weather cards. What I have face up right now, you take 6 of them, and that's the winter deck. Over here is the sun deck, the sunny summer side deck. This is for an easier game. I'm not going to use it for today's example, but you can use that as well. Or you can mix and match and take 6 tiles total between the winter and the sun deck. Let's take a quick look at the board. So each of these spaces is a space to move throughout the mountain all the way up until you get to the top of the mountain. Some of the circles have these yellow numbers on them, some don't. If they don't have a yellow number on them, it means that it costs 1 movement to move into all of these circles. To move into a spot with the yellow ones, it costs 2 movements to move in here. So if, let's say you had 3 movement and you move 2 here, let's grab a guy. So I'm here, I have 3 movement, I move 2 here, I have 1 movement left. Well, I can't spend it on these, so then maybe I'd spend, let's say this guy was here, I'd spend my 3rd movement moving him over here. We'll go over that again soon. The blue circles are acclimatization circles, where you actually do acclimatize and you build up on your acclimatization track. We'll go over that again soon too. The red circles move you down on your acclimatization track. So those are spots where the oxygen level is less. All these little flags tell you how many points your guy has scored. So if your guy has made it to there, then I move the baggy guy up to level 3 on the score track. If I get to level 7, then I move him up to level 7. Over here you can see 6,000, 7,000, 8,000. That's how many meters you're up in the air, to the 8,611, to the summit of K2. And as you get higher, things start getting harder with acclimatization, and weather starts to affect us more at higher levels throughout the game as well. For the weather track, we'll start it here, and then it moves here on day 2, and day 3 it will move here. And then when it gets to there, we take this one over, we slide it over there, we put that over there. So you always have 6 days of weather to look at a time. You'll never have it where you're just guessing what's coming next. You'll always kind of know what the forecast is. The last thing to know about the board are these numbers here. And this tells you how many climbers can be on a space at the same time. So right here in a 5-player game, it says that there can be 3 climbers on a space. So let's say we have 3 climbers right here already. A 4th climber cannot end up in that space. So let's say purple's moving through and let's say they have 4 movement. It costs 2 to move in here, so they move 2. And then they have 2 more movement left, they'll move 4 here. They can do that because you just can't have more than 3 people ending on a space. So they can move through there and have 4 there for a second as they move through, but they can't end there. So if they only had 2 movement left, 2, they wouldn't be able to do that. That would be blocked off because there's too many people here. This becomes a real problem at the end of the game when you're trying to get to the summit and everything starts to bottleneck right up here and makes it really difficult to move through because only 1 or 2 people can go through. When it has this red symbol in a 5-player game, that means you can play it with 2 there or 1 there, depending on what difficulty you want to play it as. Obviously, 1 player being on a space is much more difficult than 2. 2 is still pretty difficult though. So Scott, you've showed me the board now and some of the mechanisms, but how do you actually play the game? Let's go over that. At the beginning of your turn, or the beginning of each day, you take your deck and you take 6 cards from your deck into your hand and you look at them. And the first thing you're going to do is take 3 of them that you're going to play this turn. And you take them and you put them face down in front of you until everyone's done that. The other 3 you set aside for your hand for later. So then once everyone has their 3 cards face down, you flip them over. So I have these ones. Let's say everyone has their cards out and blue has these cards out. We have to see who has to take risk this turn. And how you do that is you add up the total number of movement that you have. And whoever has the most movement has to take a risk token, which is bad. So blue here has 3, which is an acclimatization. That doesn't count as movement, that blue one. They have that rope card, which goes 2 up or 3 down. For risk assessment, you only go take the up movement. So they have 2 for that rope card plus 1 for this card where my thumb is. That gives them 3 movement. I just have 3 normal movement cards in my hand, which total up for 4. So I have 4 movement. Blue had 3 movement. Let's say yellow, purple, and red all had less than 4 movement. I would have the most, and I'd take a risk token. Now, if someone tied me at 4, then and that was the highest number, then no one would take a risk token, which would be a good thing for everyone. So let's take a look at these risk tokens real quick. When you have to take a risk token, there's always going to be 3 up in the pile of risk tokens. And then you're going to take which one you want, which is always going to be the one with the least amount on there. So I would take this 1 risk token, which is going to hamper either my movement or my acclimatization on this turn. And I have to take it because I risked the most movement this turn. The most energy, let's say. And once someone takes it, you flip over another one. That I flipped over a 0. The next turn is going to be a good turn to use a lot of movement if possible, because you can always just take this 0, which doesn't affect your movement or your acclimatization at all. Once we've determined who's gotten the risk token, then we start moving, and we start with the player order, whoever has the first player token, and move clockwise around. So if this is the hand I played, the 3 cards I played, I'd have to move 4 points between my 2 guys. So I could move one of my guys 1, 2, 3, 4, or I could go 1, 2, 3, and 1, or I could split it up 2 and 2. Instead of that hand, let's say I played this hand with a 2 movement, a 1 movement, and a 1 acclimatization. And I'm showing this because if you remember, I got this 1 risk token as well this turn that I have to deal with. So how do you deal with these risk tokens? I can either set it aside to be one of the points on one of these cards and take away a speed, or movement speed, or I can take away my acclimatization. So I could take away my acclimatization and this card would just go away, right? It would be worth 0 acclimatization. Or I could take away this 1, and then I'd have this left, 1 acclimatization and 2 points of movement. Or I could take away one of these movements and have 1 movement on this card, 1 movement on this card, and 1 acclimatization. And the reason that's important with the movement here is, let's say I took away this 1 card altogether. I can't split up that 2 movement between 2 people. I have to spend that whole 2 movement, 1, 2 on this guy, on that guy, right? If I went and did where I got rid of 1 movement on the 2 card and 1 movement on the 1 card, then if I wanted to, let's say my guys were here, I could go 1 from my 1 card and 1 from my other card. It gives me a little bit more options than just having 2 to play only. Because you cannot split, I can split up movement between cards, but I cannot split up movement from 1 card between 2 people. When I play my acclimatization as part of my hand, so this is my hand that I played this turn, and I have 1 acclimatization, I can move that acclimatization to either of my characters here, my baggy or my normal character, my tight character. And then all you do is move it up 1. So I want to put 1 acclimatization on my baggy guy. I can do that and move it up 1. The other place where you can use risk is, let's say I spent a card on either one of my guys. As long as I spent a card on them this turn for movement or acclimatization, I can then just use the risk instead of using it off of a card and docking a point from a card. I can just dock it back down from a character that I spent a card on that turn and take an acclimatization away off their player board. Let's say our players on our board are somewhere like this and our player board's somewhere there with our acclimatization. After we're done moving, we check all of our acclimatization levels. This one says that baggy gets 1 more acclimatization, so he gets to go up to 5. Tight does not have a blue circle, so he has to stay. Then we check the weather. The weather, before that fell, said, we were right here on the weather, said that if we were in the 8,000 level or higher, which is the top level way up at the top of the mountain, then we would lose 1 acclimatization on top of it. Day 2, we know that if we're anywhere from 7,000, this level, or higher, or 8,000, we're going to lose 2 acclimatization at the end of the turn. And here, on day 3, no matter where we are on the mountain, as long as we get out of this main section, this base camp area, once we get up to this first level, we're going to lose 1 acclimatization if we're on level 6,000, 7,000, or 8,000, plus every movement's going to cost us 1 extra movement to get there. So to move from here up to here usually costs us 2 movement because of that yellow. Now it's going to cost us 3 movement. After we're done with the acclimatization checks for the round, we get rid of the 3 cards that we just played. They go into a discard. We take the 3 remaining cards that we didn't play that turn, and we take 3 new cards from the top of our deck and add it to our hand, and we start over again. So this would be my hand for the next time to play from. So when you're moving, if you have a card that just has a full number on it, that can go up or down that number of spaces. So this one can go up 3. These rope cards can go up 1 and up 1, or this one can go down 3 or down 2. They're very specific on their down movements on those ones, where this one can go up or down the same amount of spaces either direction. When you're moving, you have to have the full amount of spaces. So let's say I'm moving this guy and I want to move him up here. I want to get him to that spot. Well, I have 5 points of up movement. So I would go 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I really need 7 movement to get there. So I won't be able to get there this turn because I need 3 more movement, and I already spent 4 of my 5 movement to get to where I'm at. So what I could do instead is I still have either, I've used 3 movement here, I've used the 4th movement from one of these cards, so I could either move this guy or this guy back down 2 spots or 3 spots, depending on which card I want to use for a down movement. So let's say I would just want to move this guy back down 2 because I want him to go this way. Maybe this way got too bottlenecked up with other characters up this way. And I realize, oh, I don't want this guy going up this way because it's too congested. So I'll move him back 2 with that last card here. So I use this 3 to go up, that 1 to go up, and that 2 to go down. With the acclimatization, if you ever get a character that goes above 6 at the end of the turn, they're at higher than 6 acclimatization, they just start back at 6. You can go higher, but you always start at 6. If you ever go off of one, like let's say this guy's here and I lose one acclimatization at the end of this turn and he was already here, well, he goes there. He is now dead and out of the game. There is a family variant where you have a special card, this card right here, and this allows you to bring your character back. I never use it, but it might be a good way to use it if you're playing with younger kids or newer gamers, so it's not quite as harsh of a game. It brings your character back one time. And remember, at the end of each round, wherever your guy is on flags, wherever flag number you're at, so my smooth, tight guy is at 4, I put my guy at number 4 on the score track over here. And if this guy got up to number 8, I'd put him way up at 8. But remember, you have to not only get up high on the track to get points, you have to get up and survive every single one of these different weather condition days. If you don't, even if I got up to level 8 here and then I died, I get 0 points for that character. I lose every point that I earned for that character. The last thing to talk about is tents. Tents help you with acclimatization. So what happens here is, let's say this guy wants to put his tent down here because he's getting low on his acclimatization track there. So he wants to stay safe throughout the rest of the game as much as he can. To place a tent, it costs as many movement points as that space is. So he has to play 3 movement points from his hand of 3 cards to put a tent down here. So that would be 3 of my 4 movement points. I'd have 1 movement point left to play this turn on either that character, if he could move somewhere else, which he can't because he's between a 3 and a 2, or this other character down here, which would, in this case, would only allow him to go backwards 1 spot. Or I don't need to use it at all. What happens with that tent is that subtracts an acclimatization. So actually this 1 acclimatization and that tent would cancel each other out, basically, because that adds an acclimatization, this tent, and that red circle takes away an acclimatization from my board, leaving me at 0. And the only acclimatization that I will be affected by is any that is in the weather that turn. You play through 18 full days of the game, and whoever has scored the most points on the score track combined between their 2 characters, or 1 character if they have only 1 left, or 0 characters, you get 0 points if both of your characters die. Whoever has the most points is the winner of the game. If it's a tie, whoever reached the peak first is going to be the winner. And in any other situation, a tie remains a tie. So that is K2 in a nutshell. Now, why is K2 in my collection? This was kind of a grail game for me for a while. I just couldn't find it. It wasn't that it was like I don't think it was out of print, but I just couldn't find it anywhere for a decent price at all. So eventually I did find it though, and I'm very glad I did. This game is it's really unique in the fact that it's kind of a racing game. It's kind of like this hand management game. It's kind of a push your luck game. It's kind of a mean game, except it's not like really that mean. It's just where things get bottlenecked only at this one point in the game when things get bottlenecked at the top, that you kind of get head to head with people because spaces get blocked up and you can't move where you want to move. But it's not that mean of a game at the same time, but it does cause your players to die, which is a little mean. It's got all these mechanisms that aren't like, it doesn't feel like a racing game. It doesn't feel like a push your luck game, but they are at the same time. So it's got this weird, unique thing going on with these mechanisms where they're kind of there, but kind of not there, and which makes the game as a whole really unique. If you have watched any mountaineering documentaries, which I do recommend because they're very fascinating, on K2 or Mount Everest or any of them, it just feels like that in a very stripped down way. All you're worried about is getting oxygen and acclimatizing to the different oxygen levels as you go up the mountain and making it up the mountain without running out of oxygen. That's it. That's all you're doing. But it has that toughness of climbing and going up, and then you have to come back down a little bit to gain more oxygen so you don't lose it. And then you go back up a little bit further the next time. Then you might come back down again. And it's just like the actual mountaineers do when they do climb mountains. The art is very nice. The mountain of K2 on the board looks very nice. The weather cards look nice. Everything is good in the game. The quality of the game is overall really good. The wood meeples and tents work perfectly in the game. If you use minis, it would just distract from the game. The wood meeples is a great choice on that. The cards are decent enough quality. They're not like linen finish, but they're fine. And yeah, overall, this game is super easy to teach. It's super easy to play. I think people look at it and think like, oh, this is going to be like a crunchy Euro. It isn't a crunchy Euro at all. It isn't typical race game. If you don't like race games, it's not a typical race game. It's just an amalgamation of like weird semi mechanisms together. It's really cool. It's been around since 2010. It is a classic at this point, I would say. It's still being played today, and I highly, highly recommend K2. Again, you can play it for free on Board Game Arena if you don't want to buy the actual game, but there are games out there now. They're not terribly expensive to buy on the secondhand market or new. So that's it. Don't lose your balance on the ice like I almost did this morning, taking my kids to school. And peace. Stay cool. Stay cool climbing mountains. That's it. I don't know why I said that. That doesn't even make any sense. Who's climbing mountains? Peace. Hey guys, what's up? It's Scott the Frozen Gamer. My house still has heat. And it's actually not that cold in Minnesota, so why am I dressed up like this? It's because it's... Let's try that again.